Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in.
Hello. Welcome back. I think today's going to be interesting. So Kim and I were just having a conversation before we recorded, and we covered all the bases. We went from somewhat politics to social media, celebrities, and health, and our faith, and hormones and body chemicals and all sorts of stuff. And then we were like, somehow that all connects together. Let's hit the record button. So, Kim, do you want to just kick us off?
I do. So this episode is going to be called The Illusion of Separation. And actually, full disclosure, we started recording this last week.
True.
But my internet crashed, didn't come back, and it just didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because we needed this conversation. So, have you heard about what I have only recently heard about? This whole concept of there's this movement of people canceling celebrity influence, essentially. I only heard about it because I'm not actually on TikTok. Hi, I'm Kim, and I'm not on TikTok, right? I do wait for everything to go to Instagram, but I haven't seen it there yet. Anyway, my niece was telling me the other day about how this is happening and how it's kind of being compared to the Hunger Games, like celebrity kind of status, compared to normal people's status is kind of like the Hunger Games, right? You have more information on this than I do because maybe. I just got I got quick informed about it.
Yeah, I would say similar for me. And also I saw it and I was like, oh, I already don't pay that close of attention to celebrities, and I kept scrolling. And so I didn't really super study it. And also I will say I just searched into Google a quick thing to see if I could find any more details, and it came up with nothing. So apparently
it's been canceled.
Google is on the side of the celebrities.
OMG. Okay, that's funny.
But yeah, like Kim was saying, there's people online who are saying, hey, and I think, you said this, but I think it happened after the Met Gala, and people were just these people are so disconnected from my way of life, the things I'm interested in. And yet we call them celebrities, we call them influencers, because sometimes their whole life is to influence us. Well, what if we don't want what they're trying to influence? Well, then they don't have a career anymore. And if they become so out of touch with the normal people, then you don't have anyone to influence too, because you're in trying to talk about something that's just not relevant. And so I think that it's an interesting thing to deplatforming is an interesting thing. And I think there's ways of doing it. Part of me is well, it's not that I have a problem with the actual person, but I have a problem with the way the culture and the system has become, because it's not relevant to me.
Yeah.
And there probably are some people who it is relevant to, but I think that number is quickly going away. And so it's not that, oh man, I hate this celebrity. It's no, I really don't. Actually, I'm kind of indifferent towards them, which I don't know is a great thing. I think it's that to me is why when I saw it, I just kept scrolling, because I was oh, I'm really not interested in that.
That's funny. So to me, I think This is why it excites me. And this might not be the most holy or wholesome thing that I will ever say on this podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes I think that there's this whole concept that no one will ever call it, but there's this idolatry that happens with people who are famous or have a name or a face or some sort of influence over some industry that is widely seen.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of are trained to like let them have a voice in our life, even though it, like you were saying, isn't always relevant to us.
Oh.
Right. So they haven't lived in the area where I grew up. They don't work in the same industry as me. They haven't had to do the same things I have. They haven't had the same kinds of struggles. That doesn't mean they're not valuable as a human, because I think they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the part that I really want to see. I don't want to see well, I have more money than I know what to do with, so I'll pay $50,000 to go to a super secret dinner that no one else could ever possibly know about. Like, I want to see you being a human and being real. And to me, that's why it's like, oh, so we're kind of saying you represent something that isn't really real or relevant to me. And so I'm not letting you have that influence on me anymore. And I think that's the exciting part.
Yeah, I agree with like I want to see the realness of them.
Yes.
So I used to work at an airport, and my job was basically customer service, but like I would fuel airplanes, I would help people get rental cars, all sorts of things like that. And it was for like people flying on their own or chartered airplanes, not an airline. Um, and so I met a lot of really wealthy people, a lot of celebrities, a lot of musicians. And like, this is like, I've probably told you, Kim, the story, but I don't think I've ever shared it on the podcast. But one of my favorite experiences was this airplane stopped to get fuel, which was a very common because Kansas is pretty much in the middle between California and New York. And so people going across country, it was a very common fuel stop. And so uh, this plane stopped and we were fueling the plane, and I was just sort of standing out by it, and the passenger got out and just started asking me questions. And it was just this really nice lady. She was holding a baby, and like I didn't recognize her. I had no idea who she was, and we just had a normal conversation. And then she got back in the plane, or yeah, I think she got back in the plane, and the plane left. And I went inside, and someone was like, "Oh my gosh, do you know who that was?" And I was like, "Who?" They're like, "The lady out there with the baby." I was like, I have no idea." And it was like a relatively famous TV person, and I had no idea. And I was like, well, like, they were super nice. Like, I had nothing to say about them. They were just like, we had a totally normal conversation. And there's part of me that in this like cancel culture type of life, um, where like you only see a persona of somebody, like you only see their character on TV, and you're like, well, that must be who it is. And I think some of these events are like an extension of the characters they play. It's like the over the top, outlandish, how crazy can we make it? And what Kim and I are saying is we just want to see you. Like, we want to see the real person because you have value.
Yes.
You have glory. And I want to know what that is. Like, I want to know what you were made here to be. And that's just this like, yeah, it's a really cool, um, I think it's cool that people are standing up for what they have value in and saying, you guys are off. Like, that's not what we're into anymore.
Yeah.
And like, one thing Kim and I have talked about a lot is this idea of like self-governance. And as you start to decide things around you shift. So like if people were like, oh, hey, that's not what we want from movies and TV and celebrities, that shifts because we're the audience.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so that makes a big difference.
for sure. One of the things that this has reminded me of, just this whole, gosh, I don't even want to pretend like I'm promoting a cancel culture. I just like the push for authenticity.
Yeah.
Gosh, I hope that's coming through in what I'm saying, because I am not actually for shunning people. Oh, okay. But also, I was just telling Josh too that this whole thing, like, it's just this movement of people going, we've given this person influence. We're going to take that vote back, kind of like, I'm going to take away the follower, the like or subscriber, whatever it is that has happened. And they're doing it kind of collectively so that it makes an impact, so that somebody would notice. Right. So it's making a statement. But what it reminds me of is the whole GameStop thing that happened in, like, I think it was 2019, 2020, something like that. Wasn't it?
2020, 2021.
Somewhere around there. And how it's like this collective movement of normies, right? Yeah. They're saying, hey, we want to make a difference. And we don't think the system is serving us well. So let's all join forces and have a movement. Right. And then when I said this to Josh, you should tell them what you told me.
Well, you said something like, this is reminding me of GameStop. And I was like, oh, from today or from this week? And you were like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And so this week, GameStop sort of went back and started doing the same thing again. Like the stock was up over 100%. Here I have like a message that someone sent me. The stock was up over 100%. The people who had short positions lost over $1 billion. And the SEC had halted trading 5 times during the day because things were so volatile. And it was like, oh, like here we're like, there's something, I don't know, there's something in a pattern that's like happening again where it's like, you know, there's, I don't know, it's so interesting. I know people have talked a lot about the comparisons between 2020 and 2024, but it's like, here we are talking again. Crypto has been gaining a lot. The Bitcoin halving happened, and there was a lot of news around that. There's a lot of news around CBDCs and like people are, it's just really interesting. It's like some of these similar things are coming up again, and I'm like, that's interesting. Like I want to know why, and I want to know how to position myself for it.
Yeah. It's a super interesting thing. So if you want to know about the 2020, 2021 original GameStop thing, there's a movie called Dumb Money that came out last year, which is actually really quick turnaround. I just have to say.
Yeah, they didn't waste any time.
They wasted no time. It was a movie I really enjoyed because it kind of gave me more insight into what was really happening. I wasn't part of the whole GameStop thing, but I knew it was happening when it was happening. Anyway, so you can go watch that on your own time, whatever. But one of the things that we're talking about is this is what, okay, so I also like to see the patterns, but one of the things that makes me really excited about it is like the secular world, those who wouldn't necessarily say that they're driven by their faith or aren't like putting that in the forefront, I would say, are seeing something that isn't working and then making this collective effort to make a change and make their voice bigger and make it be heard. Right. And, there's the whole concept of the 3.5 or 4% of a society or of a population If they make a change, it will essentially have enough momentum to change the entire society or culture or whatever paradigm it is that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But that makes me excited because that is kind of exactly what the body of Christ is. Like I know sometimes it doesn't look like that, but the whole concept of the body of Christ is that this is a collective movement. Christianity is a collective movement. It's not dependent upon one person doing one thing. It is dependent upon all of the people making a move in a certain direction, right? And being able to have an influence on a society that you may not actually be the majority in. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see this happening out in the world. Like it's kind of a reflection of this. And for whatever reason, it gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things we were talking about beforehand was this like, we knew we were going to talk about the illusion of separation, but then all of a sudden we started talking about like Christianity is for the collective. It's for the community. Like that's how it started. That's what it was built around. It's the whole model, and it's not always been outworked that way, but at its core, that's what it is, and that's what we should fight for it to be. And I just looked at Kim and I was like these are connected. Like I don't even exactly know how, but like this whole thing is like we're looking at it as like these isolated pieces, and it's like, oh no, they're not separate at all. And we aren't separate at all. Like there's such power and truth in us as a community and as a collective, and what we can do and what we should do. And um it's like we talk about like self-governance and sovereignty, and it's like that can sound so overwhelming when you're like, I got to do everything now. But it's like, well, no, because you lock arms with this person and they bring their strengths and this person brings their strengths. And like, in some ways, that's how society just functions in general. Um, but yeah, I don't know. What else do you have on that? Because I just feel like there's something connecting there and I'm not quite getting it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I think that one of the biggest lies that we believe in this world is that we are all separate and we are all independent entities. And though that might just really rub on some tender parts right now, just know that that's not the intention. The intention is to say that, you know what, we are all very connected and we are all part of the whole, even though we carry very unique expressions of the whole. And each of us individually are needed, but individually, the power is not there. In the separation, that is not where the power is. The power is in the connection. And, I think that even at the most basic level, one of the worst lies we can believe is that we're actually separated from the Father, from Yahweh. How many times have you felt like you're just like floating alone? How many times have you felt like there's nothing there to back you up? How many times have you felt like, oh, I did this and now I'm so far away from God? When I think in reality, actually, I know in reality, just because of an experience I had the other day, and I can tell you about that, but whatever. I know in reality, he is never separate from us. We may choose to look away and we may not see him there, but there's this illusion that there's separation, which then makes us think that, oh, we're pulled away. We're this lone wolf. Oh, we're not part of the collective, but it's a lie. There's nothing actually that can separate us from the collective. And there's nothing actually that can separate us from him. We are his and he is ours. And honestly, there's this, for a long time, we talked about unity and oneness. Remember this, Josh? Like this still burns inside of me, but I kind of feel like it's established now. And so I don't talk about it so much anymore. But for a long time, like I was striving to get to the point of oneness with the Lord, right? Like really working toward it. And I think I had convinced myself somehow that I wasn't already there, when in fact I came from him and I will return to him. Like there is nothing that could separate it. But we believe it sometimes. But this is why it's so important to know about the collective, even within the body of Christ too, is because there really isn't a separation there. It's just when you decide to turn the other way and ignore it, then it feels like it's not actually there. And when that happens, that's when the power diminishes. Because then it's not a collective effort. It's their effort and their effort and their effort and their effort and your effort and my effort and their effort and their effort and their effort. Right. And it feels like you're kind of pulling against one another. When I think if you could just take another look, you would see that you might actually be pulling all toward the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helped with what you were trying to say.
No, I think it's such a good way to say it. And yeah, there's this thing in like psychology where when people are really dealing with anxiety or depression, one thing that can be really helpful is to connect with a community and um, start living for um, start living for something bigger than just yourself. So when you wake up, if there's something where you're like, oh, it's not just me and I have to do this for me, but you're doing something for a group, like it shifts your mindset and like can help pull you out of dark situations. It may not be the only thing and it may not be the answer for everybody, but oftentimes that bigger perspective of, oh, there is something else I'm living for, there is a community, there is a group that's all around, and that's what I'm living for. Like that's like, to me, that's what the church was supposed to be. Like you were supposed to wake up and be like, well, I'm doing this for the church because that's my group, that's my community, that's my core. um and it's been outworked kind of wonky, but like I think
We do
that's
that
what,
sometimes.
yeah, humans do that, but I think that's what it was supposed to be. And it's that like sense of belonging that everybody has innately. Everybody wants to belong. Everybody wants to be part of a community until they're just beaten down and beaten down and beaten down and beaten down and convinced it's not for them. And then they're convinced to just be a lone wolf, but it's not who they are and it's not how they're supposed to be. It's who they've become out of necessity because of other broken humans. But there's healing for that and there's not separation. Like can come back together.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it makes me think about, and this is from my own experience. So I'm sure hundreds, thousands, millions of people have had other experience, but it makes me think about entrepreneurship and how difficult it can be to have the drive to actually wind up succeeding if all you're fighting for is for yourself. And at least in my experience, if I have a collective purpose that's driving it, then boy, do I want to see it go forward. And
Yeah.
am I like even more invested in seeing it succeed? But when I'm working for myself by myself, that's when some of those lines start to get blurry. And then there isn't so much drive to keep going because it's not connected to a purpose that will impact other people or that will help other people. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
sometimes that purpose has to be there to actually have the drive to go forward. I think even with this podcast, Josh, if I had just done it by myself, or if you had just done it by yourself, do you think we would still be doing it? There's no
Probably
way
not.
I would be. Not a chance.
No.
Because half the time I don't feel like recording.
Yeah.
No offense intended. I just,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like the most glorious thing on the earth. But there's someone else who's counting on it. And always there's life that comes out of it. So there is this like higher purpose that's coming out of it, as opposed to me just doing it for myself and by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. It's so important. It's so important to have that sense of belonging and that sense of purpose. It's needed in life, and that's what I don't know. It's my desire that everybody feel that and everybody find that. There's so many amazing communities out there. There's for every community you've been hurt in, there's at least one that is a beautiful community. Like it's just, I think sometimes we look in our small box and our small experience and we're like, well, that's how it worked. But like, try again, try again, try again. Keep looking because you'll find the body parts you're supposed to be connected to.
Right. Right. You know, sometimes I think so. Okay. It's no new news that I think that everyone carries innate value and everyone has something very important to contribute to society, to humanity, to the kingdom. I know I say that very nonchalant, but listen to some of the other episodes and then you'll kind of understand where we're coming from with that. But I also think sometimes when you're not like operating from your part of the body where you're supposed to be, then the stuff that you contribute doesn't seem as important or as valuable to the other parts that are around you. But once you get plugged into that piece, like the place where you do fit, then all of a sudden the things that you have to contribute, which you might now think hold no value, but they do. Now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's been people looking for this the whole time. They've been waiting for you to come. They've been waiting for you to finally get into the place where you belong so that that whole part can start to flourish. And I think that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know how to say it better. I just agree.
Good. I think it's, you know, sometimes I think I look and at what Yahweh's created and I'm just like, man, you nailed it. You know, like there's so much of this that's built in and we're here and it's all around us. But I still have those epiphanies. I'm just like, man, he really knew what he was doing, you know? And I love that.
For sure. It's like things like that, I think, are what give me hope for the future. Like, you know, it makes me think of like when we interviewed Gil Hodges and he was talking about AI and he was like, a lot of people are worried about AI, but the Father hasn't directly told me no, and I'm still alive. So I'm going to keep going for it. I'm going to keep moving towards it because I know it'll end well. He's not even just talking about AI, he's just talking about life. But he's like, I don't believe it's just gonna totally overtake and overthrow everything because like that wouldn't be like I just don't think that's how the Father would do it. And so it's like, do you believe God's good or not?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I look at creation, even the wild, crazy, wacky celebrities who dress up weird, I'm like, you guys are amazing. Just find your spot. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. It's good. We love them too.
Of course. I love movies and TV, so I need them.
Okay, quick fire question. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. Um, my go-to answer is definitely Maybe. It's an older rom-com.
With Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know if I could tell you exactly what it is about it. I just really enjoy the feeling, the story, the emotion of it. It's a solid movie.
Nice. Does that line up with your favorite actors? Or do those
Um, no, I don't think so. I don't. I think it just in general is one I enjoy.
nice?
Yeah. What about you? What's your answer?
It's hard to pin down one favorite. The first that comes to mind today is Inception. I love
Great movie. Great movie.
and it has some of my favorite actors in it, and that
Mhm.
helps too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's funny. I picked a rom-com and you picked this like deep thinker movie, and I'm like, part of me is like, oh, should I have picked a better movie?
Here, I'll give you another one. Here's one that a few years ago I never would have claimed, not because it's a bad movie, just because sometimes I want to look intelligent.
Sure.
The Family Man. I watch it every Christmas. I love it. It was
It's
not the
fun.
best work by Nicolas Cage. It was not the best work by Taya Leone, but I love it.
Yeah.
And there's
That's
a rom-com.
awesome. Awesome. Well, listeners, let us know what your favorite movies are. Let us know how you found community. Like, let us know when you realized you weren't alone. Maybe it was right now,
Maybe it was
but
right.
that's amazing. I want to hear about it.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.